Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our From the Field Farm Chat with Idaho Wheat today. My name is Ryan Mortensen. I'm the Communications and Programs Manager for the Idaho Wheat Commission. And today for our From the Field, we'll be talking with Doug Finkelnburg, Area Extension Educator at the University of Idaho. And Doug, I also want to mention, recently promoted to full professor for the university. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So Doug, I'll let you go ahead and kind of give our listeners more about you and your background and what you do for the university, and then we'll jump into our conversation today.
Sure. Well, my position is Area Extension Educator for cropping systems in northern Idaho. How that breaks out is I'm given 5 counties, the predominantly grain-growing counties in north central Idaho, where I conduct continuing education for a non-academic yet professional audience. So I coordinate meetings, demonstration trials, field tours, where producers, anyone associated with the ag industry can hopefully come and learn something that they can use in their farm business operation or in their ag industry support position.
And we appreciate the work that you do, Doug, on behalf of wheat farmers. So just to jump right in, can you tell us a little bit about the status and where the university stands currently on the resubmission or the intent to resubmit the climate change grant, the IAMP?
Yeah, so the university landed the largest grant that it had ever received 2.5 years ago when we were awarded $55 million for the Innovative Agriculture and Marketing Partnership grant as we build it. And it came through a climate smart commodities pool of funds administered by USDA. We were all really bummed this spring in April when we got a letter from USDA saying that they had reimagined this program and that they set some new goals and priorities, and our program, as it was ongoing and structured, didn't meet their new goals and priorities the way that they would prefer. So they sent us a cancellation notice, but they said that we were eligible for reapplication if we could change the program to align with the new goals and priorities, which we have done. And we are now in the process of finalizing that resubmission. So our hope is that if USDA sees this, our revised take on still a project that incentivizes farmers to try novel practices that help build their soils, that improve their sustainability of their farming systems, and has a really renewed emphasis on agricultural marketing, that will get reawarded the existing funds and be able to move forward with what we're thinking of as we've called this Innovative Agriculture and Marketing Partnership Program, IAMP as the acronym. Well, now we're thinking of it as IAMP 2.0, which is not going to have any climate research involved with it. Those things were deprioritized by USDA, but it will have a renewed emphasis on empowering producers to more flexibly and innovatively market their commodities that are funded through and targeted with this program. So we have a June 20th resubmission deadline, and we're going to meet that. And if we're on track, we actually should meet it by we might even exceed it. And then it'll be a waiting game to see 30 to 60 days later how USDA feels about that and if they're willing to turn the light switch back on. But we're doing everything we can at the university level to keep the possibility of this funding coming to Idaho growers. That's our priority.
Right. Can you talk about other fallout from the recent USDA budget cuts or other problems that are persisting with extension and the university in general?
Well, it's a complicated funding environment, to be sure. I think there's no way to sugarcoat that. There were a number of USDA Ag Research Service, ARS positions that were either permanently or temporarily terminated back in February. Fortunately, many of those researchers were deemed more essential than they had been in the first go round, and we were able to get them back. And those work closely with university programs to help support. There's a lot of collaborative research there. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of those USDA researchers didn't get to bring back their staff. And so they have a real deficit in manpower now in their ability to execute their tasks of supporting some critical areas of agricultural research that, again, from the university perspective, we rely on them and work closely with them on projects. So it's just putting downward pressure across the ag research system on our ability to solve problems and come up with novel solutions to ongoing issues. So that's unfortunate. There's been a slowing in or an elimination of grant opportunities, some hiccups in that system where we're hoping that some NEFA funding will be made available, but they're a little late on releasing the requests for proposals. We're hoping that those will be released so that there will be some funds to continue new and innovative research projects in that direction. But broadly, it's a very challenging funding environment.
With your resubmission of the IAMP grant and the USDA accepting your application to move forward, can you talk more about how this will benefit wheat farmers, Idaho wheat farmers?
Sure, sure. You know, the project that was, as it was originally conceived, was designed to bring well over 50% of the funds allocated in the total grant to producers through incentivizing practices that would promote that would help offset synthetic nitrogen use and maintain productivity, that would build soil organic carbon through amendments with some, excuse me, compost. We were looking at reintroduction or integrating cover crops, again, for that crop diversification standpoint and building soil organic matter. Those practices, which are NRCS recognized and approved practices, are still going to be in the 2.0 version going forward. And there's a lot of, I think, benefits for wheat producers from finding ways to minimize input costs and yet maintain yields that in an environment like we're in, where fuel, crop protection products, and fertilizer are a huge chunk of the operating costs, we're hoping that if we can learn how to minimize those inputs and yet maintain our output for yield, that will derive direct benefit to Idaho wheat producers. Plus, there's a sustainability aspect from the long term with building better soils with more organic matter, water storage, insulation against the risk of droughts like we're seeing in some places this season. These legacy benefits that we believe are also to be encouraged, that we're hoping to take advantage of.
With the resubmission of the 2.0 version, Doug, were there any new marketing targets and or priorities that weren't in the original application?
I don't think that there are brand new areas. There's just going to be more funding available to explore what we'd originally defined. So we're looking at empowering producers with some marketing funds just through participation in the project. Again, this isn't submitted yet, so not all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, but there was an original intent to work with ag industry and work with other entities that can help define value-added market chains. And what we're going to be looking at now is helping empower producers to pursue those connections from the ground level instead of directing it from top down. So there's been a little switch in how we're looking at the funding mechanism itself, but not a real change in the recognition of areas that we acknowledge our deficits right now with our marketing capabilities, and trying to help folks find ways to add a few cents bushel to their commodity.
Do you know about how many years we're into the original and then how many will be in the next
Yes.
evaluation?
So May 1st was the end of the second full year of project implementation. It's a 5-year grant. And so we're going to be going through, if I'm doing my math correctly, May 1st of 2028 as within the originally defined parameters of the project. So we'll have just less than 3 years of practice of program implementation. And then there's the possibility of a no-cost extension. If we still have funds that we haven't allocated at that point in time, there's a good possibility we can go to USDA and say, hey, we're not looking for more money, but we would love to continue to spend this out over the next 6 months, 12 months. So, but you don't know about that until you get closer to the end date, whether or not you have that flexibility.
Tell us about something you're excited about to come out of this new 2.0 version of the grant.
I think that there's the potential for us to learn a lot about what will happen when you're able to sort of prime the pump. And thinking from the marketing aspect here, if we empower producers across the state to pursue their marketing goals and aims, just without us prescribing exactly how to do it, right? It's going to be a really good learning experience to see how this plays out, because I am fully convinced that producers know the most about what is best for their farm on their farm every time, hands down. And if we give them the opportunity to take that kind of specific expertise and extend it out with how they can market their products produced on their farm, or collectively, perhaps if they're in a grain shed or an area where they're producing in a way that a few of their neighbors are participating in the program, might be able to collaborate and jointly try to pursue something. I just think from a grassroots standpoint, I'm really excited to see what people come up with on their own.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Thanks, Doug. Along with your work with the IMP grant, I know you're also working with the Herbicide Resistance Initiative. Can you tell us about the current status of that initiative and what your role is within that?
Sure. The Pacific Northwest Herbicide Resistance Initiative is a multi-state, multi-institution, USDA-funded effort to try to address the quickly evolving issue of herbicide-resistant weeds across the Pacific Northwest landscape. I mean, we've seen Palmer amaranth 2 years ago be introduced into southern Idaho, and now we can find it all along the freeway corridor across the southern end of the state, from east of Burley all the way into eastern Oregon. We actually have a mapping tool where we're tracking the spread of Palmer amaranth. Just as if we find samples, we're putting it up on this map. Anyone can go to pnwhri.org and find that mapping tool and see in a heat map where the concentrations of that herbicide-resistant Palmer amaranth, and this is the stuff that has 4-way resistance. It's resistant to glyphosate. It's resistant to dicamba. It's resistant to, say 4 sites of action sometimes. And it's a real big issue, especially with sugar beet production, although that's only so far. Now, as it gets more widely spread, it may become a real issue in some other production systems. But what my role in this is, I was heavily involved with its conception, with putting the right coalition of interests together in order to advocate for this. It's a uniquely funded initiative, kind of like the old STEEP project, which was solutions to erosion, environment. It was a a federally funded effort to address soil erosion back in the 80s. We looked at that model and said, let's see if we can resurrect that, get a congressional line item, and have some dedicated funds to address a regional issue. And we were able to get that in front of some congressional champions who took it across the finish line, got this money flowing. I've been leading the extension outreach effort since it was launched. So I'm managing the website. I'm helping coordinate the outreach tools like our herbicide resistance mapping tool, where you can go on a county by county basis and access the herbicide resistant weed screening results from 3 states weed science programs. So that's a tool we've made available. So if you're a field man or a farmer in Umatilla, Oregon, and you want to know what's been found in that county and what specific active ingredients have been found that different populations of weeds are resistant to, that information is available right now. And it will be updated and sharpened as time goes along, but we've created this mechanism for grain growers throughout the 3-state area to better understand what researchers have found in their location. And hopefully, we're always trying to empower producers to make management decisions ahead of time instead of just going out there and saying, right in the autopsy, this is how things went bad. So we can let folks know they already have Downy brome resistant to these 2 AIs in their county. Maybe they've got time before they go to make an application to put a product in that we know we don't have resistance to, if that product exists, which is a different conversation.
Yeah. A question from Jim. He says, as this is a line item in the federal budget, will you have congressional support to continue the project as Steve did for many years?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's kind of a challenging funding environment right now. And we know that we are uncertain how things are going to shake out. I'm fully convinced that this is a very nonpartisan issue. However, federal spending allocations are being decided by greater minds than mine at the moment. Of course, we have concerns. I think that we've been making all efforts to communicate with our key stakeholder groups about the importance and effectiveness of this effort. And beyond that, I'm not sure what it's going to take to keep specific items in a budget or out of a budget, but we're hopeful that there'll be a recognition that this is a priority for Northwest producers, and that this problem is not going to get better if we quit putting effort into it.
I appreciate the comment that you're keeping that information updated as regularly as possible. Weeds don't stop evolving, so that updated information is very beneficial to farmers. And continuing the project is really important. Jim made a comment to keep wheat leagues informed and prioritize this. So those that are working on behalf of wheat producers.
Yeah, there's it's obviously it takes a lot more than just myself. I'm one member of a larger team. One of the most valuable things about this initiative is it has created the opportunity for weed scientists from our 3 Northwest land grant institutions to collaborate. And at this point in time, a couple years into this initiative, they've got a working group where they're meeting every other week to align their research, to find out if one lab in one state has capacity to run samples that the other one doesn't have yet. So we're increasing efficiencies across the system, because this really, I think of it as seed money, has allowed us to build a collaborative capacity. And that's just adding value to producers in each of the states that are receiving some funds from this.
With the conversation is going to be ongoing as regarding the budget cuts. Can you talk about the possible impact of the Lever-Smith budget cuts and what maybe you're foreseeing for full year 2026, or any updates?
Yeah, from anybody at a land grant institution is going to be somewhat shocked or horrified to see Smith Lever funds potentially on a chopping block. much of our capacity is based on those funds. However, the statements that have been put out about how certain programs like 4-H are going to be insulated from aspects of the cuts are reasons to hope. And so it's really uncertain how they're going to go about reducing those Smith-Lever funds if they do. And to me, it just seems like I don't think there's enough specificity other than a statement in the president's budget saying we'd like to prioritize this, but I don't think we've seen it go through House and Senate and all the other steps that have to happen to get to a final budget yet. So if those funds were to go away, if we're going to ask the hypothetical, it would be crushing for university extension programs. But I don't think that that's what has been proposed in the initial budget proposal. So I think time's going to have to tell on this one, but it's definitely something we need to, um, that as we're currently structured, we need to operate.
Say, Doug, with all the difficulties going on in the budgets and stuff, let's turn to something more fun. What are you seeing in the field this year? What is exciting that you're seeing? What are your growers seeing? What's the crop look like right now? As the heat hurt you, or where are you at for this year?
Well, I'm happy to report that this is going to be another year where North Idaho does not have a winter wheat crop failure, because we've never had one. We've had better years than others, but we've never had a total crop failure, and we won't again this year. We had decent seeding conditions. We had a good enough winter. We came through it with solid stands. We are being affected by ongoing drought. We're in some sort of at least excessively dry to a D1 drought condition in most of the grain growing areas in North Idaho. In the poor sections of fields, shallower soils, compaction, whatever the issue is, we're really starting to see the difference in how healthy the wheat is on the eroded ridge tops, for example, versus the versus the deeper, better soil draws. Unfortunately, we're not going to have an excellent wheat crop in North Idaho, but we will have a wheat crop for sure. When you go talking about spring crops, we're going to have a rough year. This persistent dryness, 2 inches behind normal precipitation, no significant rain in the first 2 weeks of June. Those are the conditions that align for a fall with a lot of crop insurance claims for spring crops. And I'm anticipating that unless the forecast is wrong for the next 7 to 10 days, that is what we're going to anticipate for our spring crops across the board. Things are they're ahead because it's been a warmer than average spell, and they're now starting to run out of soil moisture, especially with the shallower rooted spring planted crops.
Are you seeing anything unique or different this year for disease pressures, or your soil-borne mosaic problems, are those continuing to grow, or what else are you seeing in the field?
Sure. So the good news is we've got almost no stripe rust pressure, so
Good.
that's good. And we usually don't on a dry year. But I was out looking at very susceptible varieties at a few crop tours this last week and couldn't find a speck of rust. So that's fantastic if folks don't necessarily need to put a fungicide application out to deal with things at this point. We have continued to see soil-borne wheat mosaic virus in two different counties in North Idaho. This spring, we haven't added additional sites to those that we had found the last 2 years. But the bad news is we have 4 locations in Idaho County that are non-contiguous that have tested positive, and we've seen sites in Nez Perce County get a little bigger as the soils moved around through regular cropping activities. So we have locations with soil borne in as small as, I would say, acre or under, and some where we're probably up to 5 acres or more of affected field. And the unfortunate reality is those are only going to get larger. So At every opportunity, I'm encouraging anyone who wants to market wheat in northern Idaho to be thinking very hard about whether or not their varieties have some soil-borne resistance, or to be thinking that down the road, that will be a priority for some producers who will need that resistance gene as a tool to use in their wheat portfolio, because they'll have some fields that may need to have blends planted with resistant and yield hog varieties, whatever the strategy is. But we know that varietal resistance is probably our best, most practical mechanism for dealing with this disease, because it doesn't go away once it's in the soil. Nobody can afford to fumigate for it at the scale that would be necessary. However, we know there are producers in central and North Oregon, southern Washington, western Oregon, where the disease is somewhat endemic now, and they're producing wheat just fine. They've just been able to move to varieties that, or to strategies that incorporate resistance into their management.
Right. I mean, the resistance gene is good. It's solid. There aren't many varieties with that in the Northwest yet available, but everyone's trying to fast track them as quick as they can to get more into your hands. And so hopefully those will be coming along soon. Now, it also sounds like you also have maybe set up for some crown rot issues coming up with the dry conditions. We'll see how that sorts out a little bit, but I'm glad your stripe rust is at least gone.
Well, when we have bad stripe rust years, I like to tell producers it's a very good problem to have, because it means we have a lot of excessive moisture around.
That's right.
So it's sort of a double-edged sword with that one. On the soil-borne front, I can say that our diagnostic lab at Parma, University of Idaho's diagnostic lab, led by James Woodhall, has developed a soil bioassay for testing for soil-borne wheat mosaic virus. And this is important because it's novel. Up until now, if you wanted to test for soil-borne wheat mosaic in your field, you would have to take affected plant tissue, and there's only a few week period in the spring where there's enough viral load in the tissue that you can collect a sample and get it analyzed and hope to get a real result. So after it warms up, the plants green up, the viral load goes down, the yield time bomb is still set, but you're not going to be able to test for it with vegetation. With James's soil assay, we should be able to test a field at any point of the year and determine whether or not the disease is present. So this is a pretty cool capability that University of Idaho has been able to bring to the table to help producers be more flexible in their understanding of whether or not they have this issue.
No, that's a very important tool. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think people need to be aware and use that, try to keep ahead of the problem as best they can. So Doug, you got a bunch of field days coming up. You want to plug in for some of the field days and activities coming up?
Monday, June 16th. This is just coming up next week. We've got a University of Idaho and Lima Grain Cereal Seeds collaborative field event scheduled at 10 a.m. in the mornings, just southeast of Genesee, Idaho. Anybody who would like those details, they can find them on the University of Idaho Extension website, or they can email me at dougf@uidaho.edu, and I'm happy to give you all the specifics. We're going to be touring winter wheat varieties, talking with the plant breeders from Lima Grain Cereal Seeds, and highlighting some of the co-developed Varsity Idaho lines that are being released. That evening at 5 o'clock in Lewiston, we're having a twilight tour. We're just an hour and a half. We're going to stop and talk about the University of Idaho variety testing program for winter wheat. Dr. Kurt Schroeder is going to lead that discussion. At both events, we've got a sweetener this year where we have Colby Field from University of Idaho Extension, ag economist, and he's going to put himself in the hot seat and talk to us about what's going on in grain markets and what we know about some of our trade relationships issues, ongoing things. So Colby was kind enough to let me talk him into coming and chatting about that without the benefits of a PowerPoint or anything else. So we're excited to have that information and some current information and expertise to be able to share on these crop tours. I think it'll really add to the value of the discussion.
Oh, that's really exciting, Colby. I hope your crystal ball is better than mine and working better than mine is.
I
It's gonna
spent
be
the
a
whole morning
challenging year.
poring over USDA reports in preparation to have the most up-to-date information. So
Thank you.
Beyond
Good.
that, grain producers are gonna wanna keep their eyes on the June 24th Prairie Area Crop and Conservation Tour. That'll be in the Camas Prairie, the one in northern Idaho. But those events have been shared through IGPA and Idaho Wheat Commission. But that'll be another event that I think grain producers should be. Oh, and it is going to co-align with, I think the Lewis County Idaho Grain Producers Association is going to have a meeting in the morning and a breakfast. So we'll start with that and then go on the crop tour, which is kind of a cool collaboration to conjoin those two events together. I'm thinking I need to do that with some of my tours next year, if possible.
That all sounds great, Doug. Thank you so much for your time today, for the work you do on behalf of wheat producers and for the University of Idaho Extension. We appreciate it, and looking forward to more to come with your new promotion as full professor. So congratulations again on that. For those of you listening in today, thank you for joining. Just a reminder that this recording will be posted up on our YouTube channel as well as our Spotify platform and included in our weekly newsletter as well. Just really quick before we go, I forgot to do this plug, Doug, but if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to end on an exciting note. The Idaho Wheat Commission is very excited to talk about the wheat production guide that you and the team have been working on. Could you just spend a couple minutes on that, the status of that? And we haven't had one of these, I'm going to say, well, at least 20 years since we've had a wheat production guide, something that will be really beneficial to wheat producers going forward.
Yeah, it's hard to take a manual that only exists in paper copy and pull it up on your phone. And that's really the principal issue here, is that we need to, and what we're trying to do is to take the framework of the old guide, which was really pretty solid to begin with, and we're going to update it, all the sections, and we're going to make it available online as well as in print. And if we're really, really batting right out of the ballpark, we'll build in some decision support tools to help with figuring out things like fertilizer applications or when it makes sense to take certain control measures. But the heart of what we're going to do, and that we've built quite a team of experts around the state and even outside of the state that are collaborating with us on this, is to bring that old production guide into the modern era and make it web accessible, cell phone accessible, so that you can get the benefits of it in the modern world. And that's just what we need to do.
A lot of hard work going into this already, Doug, from what we've seen and heard. So we thank you to you and your team for pushing that and moving that forward. So something for the wheat industry and growers to look forward to. So
thank you. It's been a nice conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Just a reminder, we'll have these recordings posted up on our website as well as our YouTube and Spotify platforms. And we will see you here next time for our next From the Field.